Sophia had always dreamed of a family to call her own. At 34, the vivacious tour guide thought her opportunity had finally come when she met Alan, a charming widower with 2 young children. After a whirlwind courtship, they married in an intimate ceremony, eager to begin their new life together. The early days were filled with laughter and love as Sophia embraced her role as a mother to 12-year-old Caleb and 8-year-old Millie. She delighted in helping with homework, preparing family meals, and reading bedtime stories. While Alan worked long hours to provide for them, Sophia cherished every moment spent bonding with her new son and daughter. Of course, there were challenges too. The children still grieved the loss of their mother, taken too soon by illness. Some days were marked by sullen silences and tearful outbursts. Sophia did her best to comfort them, though she knew she could never replace the void in their hearts. She could only love them fiercely and unconditionally. As the weeks turned into months, a rhythm developed in the household. Chaotic mornings gave way to peaceful evenings gathered around the dinner table. Weekends were for family adventures, hikes in the woods, trips to the museum, movie nights with popcorn, and blanket forts in the living room. Sophia began to feel that this was where she truly belonged. With Alan's encouragement, Sophia made the difficult decision to transition from tour guiding to working from home as a virtual assistant. It would allow her to be present for the kids while still contributing financially. The agency was sad to lose her, but understanding. Her adventurous spirit would simply have to roam within the confines of her new domestic life. On the 100th day of their marriage, Sophia awoke to the tantalizing aroma of bacon and the joyful shrieks of the children. "Happy 100th day," Caleb and Millie exclaimed, carrying a tray laden with breakfast treats into the bedroom. Alan grinned, setting the tray on the bed so he could scoop his wife into a celebratory kiss. "You two are so thoughtful," Sophia praised, hugging the giggling kids. They spent a lazily blissful morning together before Alan had to head into the office. "I'll be home early," he promised. "Then we'll have a proper celebration, just the 4 of us." True to his word, that evening Alan returned with a cake and small gifts for everyone. They held an impromptu party in the living room, complete with streamers Millie had made and a playlist of upbeat songs Caleb queued up. By the time they finished the movie they'd all agreed on, it was well past the kids' bedtime. With drowsy hugs and kisses, the happy family retired for the night. Sophia startled awake with a groan, disoriented in the darkened bedroom. The digital clock glowed an eerie red 1 a.m. Her body itched fiercely, and her bladder throbbed. Careful not to wake Alan, she pushed herself up, only to gasp at a sharp, piercing pain. She fumbled for the lamp and stared in confusion at the glint of metal protruding from her skin. Needles, dozens of them, clustered along her arms and legs. Sophia opened her mouth to scream, but found she couldn't make a sound. Her panicked gaze darted to the shadow figures standing at the foot of the bed. Caleb and Millie stared back at her, their faces blank and eyes glassy. "Don't worry, Mommy," Millie whispered. "We're going to make you all better. We won't let you get sick like our first mommy." In her small hand, she clutched another fistful of silver needles. Caleb held up the acupuncture chart they'd found among their mother's things, stained and worn. Sophia shook her head frantically, trying to croak out a protest. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to move, but the pain overwhelmed her. The children advanced with eerie calm, positioning needles against her flesh with the devoted precision of those who believe they're helping. Each tiny stab sent agony rippling through her. Beside her, Alan slept on, oblivious to the torment his beloved wife endured at the hands of the traumatized children he failed to truly see. The kids worked with grim focus, peppering Sophia with more and more needles as she writhed helplessly. "This will fix you," Caleb mumbled. "You won't ever leave us." Sophia wept, as much from despair as from pain. She'd wanted so badly to be their mother, to give them the love and security they needed. And yet here they were, broken by a grief too heavy for their fragile hearts, unable to see that in trying to save her, they were destroying her. The cruelest irony was that she understood. She knew the depths of their loss, their sorrow, their fear of being orphaned once more by the uncaring whims of a world that took and took. She wanted to hold them, to chase away the darkness that haunted them. Even as the needles pricked her skin, she ached to carry their burdens. But it was too late. The damage had been done long before she entered their lives. Band-aids and kisses couldn't mend this vicious wound. They would need so much more than she alone could give. Patient guidance, professional help, a father who actually saw them. Sophia's vision blurred at the edges, her breath coming shallow and fast. The agony was all-consuming now, a searing fire in her veins. She could feel her grip on consciousness slipping. Perhaps this was for the best. Perhaps her suffering could be a catalyst, a wake-up call that would spur Alan to finally address his children's fractured psyches. Even if it destroyed her, even if she became a tragic memory like their mother before her, maybe her sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. Maybe it could be the thing that saved them, that set them on a path to healing. Sophia clung to that desperate hope as the darkness closed in, smothering thought and sensation. As she slipped under, she sent up a silent prayer. For Caleb and Millie, so they might one day find peace. For Alan, to open his eyes. And for herself, that her love for this damaged little family might transcend the horror of this night. Then the void swallowed her whole, and she knew no more. Sophia drifted in a haze of pain and confusion, vaguely aware of movement around her. Muffled voices pierced the fog, Alan's anguished cry, Caleb's broken sobs, Millie's trembling attempts at explanation. There was a flurry of activity, hands on her body, the wail of sirens in the distance. She faded in and out of consciousness as she was lifted, jostled, transported. The antiseptic scent of a hospital seared her nostrils. Urgent commands were barked above her. Monitors beeped a frantic chorus. Needles were removed with agonizing care, each one a white-hot brand. Time lost meaning in the churning sea of trauma and treatment. Sophia rode the waves of painkillers and sedation, sinking into blessed oblivion, only to surface, gasping and disoriented, seized by phantom pains and the cruel knife of memory. Slowly, eventually, the chaos ebbed. She awoke in stages, eyelids fluttering against the harsh fluorescent glare. Her body felt leaden, her thoughts sluggish. She registered the bandages swathing her skin, the IV drip in her arm, the dull ache pulsing beneath the numbness. Blinking, she tried to make sense of her surroundings. Alan sat slumped in the chair beside her bed, head in his hands. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. The sight of him unlocked the floodgates in her own chest. A strangled noise escaped her, half gasp and half moan. His head snapped up, red-rimmed eyes widening. "Sophia," he croaked, staggering to his feet. He reached for her, then hesitated, hands hovering uncertainty. "Oh God, Sophia, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He crumpled, folding in on himself, as if he might implode from the force of his own guilt and grief. Throat raw, she could only watch him fall apart, tears slipping down her own cheeks. She wanted to reach for him, to offer comfort, but her arms refused to cooperate. And beneath the haze of drugs and exhaustion, a tiny bitter seed took root. He should have known. He should have seen. The days that followed were a blur of doctors, detectives, and difficult conversations. The police interviewed Sophia gently, painting a picture of Caleb and Millie's distress through their careful questions. Child psychiatrists were brought in to assess them. Alan oscillated between self-recrimination and numb shock. Sophia listened and watched, feeling strangely detached from it all. She answered queries mechanically, described the events of that horrific night in a flat clinical tone that belied the screaming anguish within. They assured her it wasn't her fault. They praised her bravery, her resilience. Inside, Sophia felt anything but brave or resilient. She felt hollowed out, scoured clean of warmth and light. The betrayal cut deeper than the needles ever could. She couldn't reconcile the children who'd attacked her with the same ones who'd snuggled up to her for bedtime stories. Alan wept and implored for forgiveness, but Sophia had no absolution to offer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He had failed them all, his fragile children, his new wife, himself. The road ahead seemed impossibly daunting, littered with shattered trust and broken promises. As her body mended, the hospital released Sophia to recover at home, except it didn't feel like home anymore. The once cozy rooms were now haunted, tainted with the memory of searing agony and the gaping emptiness where her family should have been. Caleb and Millie had been temporarily placed with Alan's sister while they underwent intensive therapy. Alan moved through the house like a ghost, leaving Sophia to her convalescence. The silence hurt worse than her healing wounds, an insidious poison that seeped into her soul. She grappled with anger, sorrow, guilt, and a yearning so fierce it stole her breath. In the darkest moments, she wondered if it might have been better not to wake up at all. The pain of losing her dream, of helplessly watching it twist into a nightmare, seemed unsurvivable. But gradually, painstakingly, she found glimmers of hope amidst the wreckage. A phone call from Millie, tearfully telling Sophia she loved her. A handmade card from Caleb, promising to work hard in therapy so he could come home. A moment of raw, honest connection with Alan, as they cataloged their missteps and vowed to do better. Piece by fragile piece, they began to rebuild. Sophia threw herself into her own therapy, excavating the wounds of her past and present. She and Alan attended couples counseling, learning to communicate and support each other. They visited the kids, bearing witness to their halting progress. It was far from a fairy tale ending. The scars, both physical and emotional, would never fully fade. Trust had to be earned anew, forged in the crucible of unflinching honesty and hard-won growth. Forgiveness came in fits and starts, a dance of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But as the weeks turned to months, turned to years, their fractured family gradually knit back together. Caleb and Millie came home armed with coping strategies and a better understanding of their own psyches. Alan stepped up as a father, his presence a steadying force. And Sophia learned to find joy again in the role of mother, even as she redefined it on her own terms. They would always carry the memory of that shattering night, the visceral knowledge of how close they'd come to total destruction. But they would carry, too, the hard-earned understanding that healing was possible, that love could endure even the deepest wounds. In the end, that understanding would be their salvation. Sophia stood on the back porch, cradling a steaming mug of tea, as she watched her children play in the golden light of a late autumn afternoon. Millie twirled a ribbon of laughter, while Caleb chased her with a mock roar. Leaves crunched beneath their feet, a carpet of crimson and gold. Strong arms encircled Sophia's waist as Alan came up behind her, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. She leaned back into his embrace, savoring the simple comfort of his touch. The fading sun lit his face, etching the lines of the past into the contours of their future. "I love you," he murmured against her skin, a vow and a prayer. She turned to catch his lips with her own, the kiss an answer, and a benediction. In the distance, Caleb and Millie called for them to join their game, their voices bright with joy and belonging. Hand in hand, Sophia and Alan stepped into the rich tapestry of the life they'd woven from the tattered threads of tragedy. The world would never be perfect, but it was theirs to cherish, to protect, to make whole. And in that moment, dappled with autumn light and wreathed in love, it was enough. It was everything.